Of all the Disney Plus shows they've put out since WandaVision, Loki was my favorite. Season 1 was phenomenal. All the things they did, the multiverse, the TVA, Owen Wilson being awesome, the introduction of a Kang variant in He Who Remains. I loved season 1 of Loki, but that was a couple years ago, and Marvel's been on the decline since then, big time. So now, after a long wait, in my opinion, they kind of waited a little too long. Loki Season 2 has begun on Disney Plus. Now, this season is supposed to solve the problems of the previous season where the whole timeline is messed up because there's a bunch of Kangs running around and Kang controls the TVA apparently. And now Loki, Mobius, and the gang have to try to fix it. And to me, this is a super important season because this is going to lead us right into Kang Dynasty. So I've been hearing mixed opinions. I haven't watched anybody's reviews yet on this season. Some people got early access. But for me, before I even get into this episode, this has to hit, man. They cannot screw this up because I think the momentum after this show is what's going to lead to Kang Dynasty being hype or being dull. And right now, there's not much to be hyped about when it comes to Marvel. So this season of Loki, super important. Super important, super imperative, and you have to remember that this multiversal Kang storyline was literally riding on the success of the first Loki show. So I wanted to get that out of the way here in the first 90 seconds of the review because I hate to say it, but I do have high expectations. If it sucks, it's really going to suck. But let's discuss Loki Season 2, Episode 1. The episode opens with Mobius and Loki running in the TVA headquarters, and what's happening is where we left off, where everything's turning into Kang, like Kang's face or whatever. And it's one of those things where this is what created the multiverse. Like, this event is what created tons of variants. So right now it feels like it's a catastrophic extinction level event, if you know what I mean. And I will say the music that played here was great and perfectly fitting for it. So everything's messed up because nobody recognizes Loki, including even Casey. And if you remember, at the end of season 1, Mobius didn't either. So everything's been reset, it seems. So there's this like mystery going on with the war room, and like B-15 and Mobius are trying to get in. And Loki's trying to find Mobius. Loki finds a recording of a conversation with He Who Remains and Renslayer. Now remember, in the comics, they're together. And it was almost implied in Ant-Man, if I remember correctly, the way that Kang in that movie was all depressed, the first thing, and angry, the first thing I thought of was that she dies, or maybe the variant that's with her dies, and that's what drove him to go nuts. I always thought that after seeing Ant-Man and during the movie. So clearly here in Loki, they are still going to follow that idea of them being an item. And that further can create an interesting story. There's a big conversation in the war room with B-15 and Mobius and the other people from the TVA, and they're discussing what their actual purpose is, because their purpose was to prevent the timeline from branching. But now B-15 is saying that they're committing atrocities, which is true. The alternate timeline variants being, basically killed, wiped out, it's not cool. I understand why they do it. Obviously, we understand. But the whole thing is we're ending lives. These people had lives, variants or not. They have their own lives to live. And I'm so happy this conversation is being had now, because it's one that I was wondering if they were going to get to in the last season, about whether or not what they're doing is actually right. There's like an epic scene where Loki used the pruning device to hit the wall, and it revealed Kang's face. And he's trying to explain to the members that this is the guy behind all this. But the thing about this show, and I will say this before we go any further, is it's going to be complicated to explain this to people who aren't really into time travel paradoxes and things like that. Because it's going to have the whole chicken and the egg thing. Was Kang in charge, or is it when He Who Remains was killed in the season finale of the first season, that's what changed everything. But He Who Remains is a variant of Kang, so who is the original Kang? That hasn't really been revealed yet. Obviously, Nathaniel Richards in the comics was the original Kang, but that I don't know if they're gonna do that with these movies. So I could see some people getting confused because I'll be honest, even I'm not 100% certain on this. Even I'm a little bit confused about how this all works, and I'm waiting for an answer. But I'll be honest, part of me thinks we're not gonna get one. Hopefully, we will. At least by the end of Kang Dynasty, to find out where this whole TVA plot actually began. Was it Kang and Ravonna? Maybe she died and he went back in time to make sure she didn't die, or what? I mean, I like the idea of Kang being a depressed, sad villain, a wounded, internally wounded character. But is that really where it began? And if so, is Kang, Nathaniel Richards, a good guy initially? Or was that Kang just a villain with a tragic backstory? Man, there's so much to talk about with this show and this whole Phase 5, Phase 6 thing. Meanwhile, the TVA's mission is to find Sylvie, because Sylvie is the reason why all of this happened, and that's true. So that could be the key to fixing this problem, even though we all know it's probably not going to get fixed in this show. I don't expect that to happen until Secret Wars. Who knows? They do a good job of reiterating the whole He Who Remains thing, where they talk about how he's trying to prevent more versions of him, more evil versions of him, from appearing, which is the Kangs that we saw in the mid-credit scene of Ant-Man. They're already there. They're already there at the end of time, and it is what it is. We also saw Victor Timely as well, which we're going to get to at some point, soon. But the situation is that Loki's starting to realize that the more the timeline splits, the more Kangs there are, and if there's an army of Kangs, it's going to cause destruction, and that's kind of the whole point. So interestingly enough, He Who Remains was right, and Sylvie made the mistake. During this episode, Loki is like phasing in and out, and he doesn't even know why, but he knows it, and Mobius even points it out. But he talks about how there's a past TVA, but Mobius is like, there is no past TVA. Time doesn't work that way here. We're just in one moment of time. The TVA exists outside of the main timeline. But now that everything's messed up, does that mean there are multiple TVAs? That's kind of what I was thinking as I'm watching this. So Loki meets a character named Ouroboros, which is actually the name of the episode. That's the name of this episode. He's a new character. So Ouroboros reveals, well, first of all, he hasn't seen Mobius in 400 years, but he reveals that Loki is time slipping. So there's a weird moment where it appears like Loki talks to Ouroboros in the past while, this is so confusing, while Mobius talking to him in the present, and then Ouroboros remembers it because I guess the time slipping, it's not supposed to happen in the TVA, but I guess, and this is difficult to understand right now. There's a lot of mystery here that hasn't been explained yet, but it looks like Loki cannot control where he ends up in the stream of time. That's what it appears to be the case. And so when he goes back and he tells Ouroboros what's going on with the time slipping, all of a sudden the future or the present Ouroboros remembers because he's changing the timeline. Man, this is wild. I love time travel stories, but I can only imagine how confusing this is going to be for people who are just average casual fans. You know what I'm saying? So Ouroboros, OB, creates this aura time gadget thing. I actually forgot the name. I apologize. In the past, for Loki, and apparently that's supposed to fix the problem. Loki has to go to the temporal loom and use the extractor device to get out of the time stream. Weird. So Loki does end up phasing or time slipping back to where Mobius was, so they do get to reunite quickly now that everything's been explained. This is a wacky scene, and everybody played it really well. I got to give credit to Tom Hiddleston. Got to give credit to Owen Wilson. They're all great. They're all funny, even if they're not trying to be. So because a lamp was like messing up, or it looked like that, Mobius tells OB that there's been power problems in the TVA, and OB is like, well, if the timeline's branching, that would explain it, which it would. I mean, that's the whole thing, The TVA itself is, what's the word I'm looking for? Unstable. And that probably explains Loki's time slipping. All because of the events of season 1. I don't think the Kangs are actually doing this, and this is just a situation that came about because of the He Who Remains getting taken out, as opposed to the Kangs actually doing this purposely. So there's like a meltdown going on, and OB wants to prune some of the branches, the new branches, and but then B15's like, no, we can't. We're gonna kill more people. This is the whole debate here, And I'm glad they're addressing it, like I said earlier. So they dress up Mobius in this big, like, astronaut-looking suit, and he's supposed to go in and use the time device to try to fix this whole problem, So this scene here is crazy, dude. Mobius is walking out on this plank, and I don't even know what to make of it. He's in the time stream, right? And it's like a giant, like, yellow light. And as he's walking, time is like disintegrating the suit he's got on. Like, this is wild. Like, this is stuff that I never thought we'd ever see in the MCU during the earlier phases, because the MCU was so grounded, even though it was a superhero story, during phase 1 and phase 2, and even some of phase 3. You had aliens and gods and things like that, but now we're going into even more abstract territory, even more so than the Doctor Strange stuff. I'll be honest, this part was a little bit confusing. The part where Loki sees Sylvie in that other room, and then him and Mobius, like, they basically get launched back into the little, like, area, like the whatever you want to call it, little, like, area that OB was in. That was a bit confusing for me. I didn't really know what was going on. My guess is that Loki was somewhere else in time, and that Mobius was successful in pulling him out. But I don't know, man. This episode is really confusing, y'all. Like, people, I don't know how this is going to be received, yo, because it's so confusing that I think people are going to crap on it, because it doesn't really make that much sense. At least not to me. And I like this kind of fiction, dude. And if I can't make sense of it, like I said earlier in this review, people who aren't even understanding of quantum theory, who don't even understand time travel or like time travel stories, it's going to confuse them too. And I'm going to have to probably go back and watch this episode again and try to figure out just what the hell is going on. The episode ends with what appears to be the TVA trying to go find Sophie, because that's what they were ordered to do, because they think that could fix this problem. So that is your cliffhanger, but there was a post-credit scene, or a mid-credit scene, whatever. In the mid-credit scene, we see Sophie appear in Broxton, Oklahoma in 1982. She goes to a McDonald's, which I'm guessing McDonald's paid for this promo. I'm going to guess. They paid Marvel for it. And she says she wants to try everything. So I'm not really sure the significance of that mid-credit scene. I thought they were going to do something with Victor Timely. Look, my honest thoughts on this, I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. It was very confusing. It seemed messy at times. Everyone was running around. So far, I was kind of expecting this to be a much tighter story, and it's kind of everywhere. But I'll be honest with you, I feel like part of that might be my own fault. Maybe I'm the one not getting it, so please leave a comment if you think you can kind of explain some of this to me, because some of this is quite confusing. And I think their purpose is trying to confuse the audience to keep us watching, and I will keep watching. I am not going to quit watching this, because like I said before, Loki is the only hope right now, because after this is that freaking The Marvels movie that's going to flop bigger than anything, I believe. So I was just hoping for something that was a little bit more than what we got. I don't know. We'll see. There are still more episodes left. I'm not going to give up on it. This episode didn't really hit me. It wasn't that great. I'm interested, but only because of how much I love the first season. This episode did not really give me that much of a teaser for what's coming next. It didn't really tickle me enough to go see it again, or to go see the next episode. But I will go see the next episode, because I know it's important to the overall Marvel phase multiversal storyline. So I'm really only watching this because I want to see what happens versus enjoying it like I did the first season, because this episode was not that enjoyable. But again, maybe it's just me. I'm adult enough to say maybe it's just me. So I didn't hate it. It was okay. We will see what happens next week. Take care, y'all. Let me know what you think. And of course, comment below for explanations if you have them or theories. And we'll talk soon.